Welcome back to the FadedTech AI podcast, brought to you by Faded. Today we're diving deep into something pretty fascinating.
Oh, yeah.
The idea that ancient civilizations might have been way more technologically advanced.
More than we give them credit for, huh?
Exactly. Like way more.
Okay, I'm intrigued.
We've got a ton of research articles and some pretty wild theories.
I'm ready. Let's go.
So get ready for a journey through ether, hidden energies, and maybe even ancient robots.
Ancient robots. Okay, you've got my attention. Ether. That's where we should probably start, right?
Right.
It's like this old concept in physics. Scientists thought it was this invisible thing filling the universe, so light could travel.
Right. Like the water in a pool, but for light waves.
Exactly. But then there was that Michelson-Morley experiment.
Oh, yeah, late 1800s, trying to detect ether.
And nothing.
Right.
Yeah, nothing. Which is why most scientists today think ether's been debunked.
True. But some of the stuff we're looking at today says maybe it's not that simple.
Oh, really?
What if back then their instruments weren't sensitive enough to pick up on ether? I see what you mean. Like maybe it wasn't a dense physical substance like they thought.
Right, more like a field of energy.
Okay, that makes sense. We can't see infrared light, but we know it's there.
Exactly. So maybe ether's kind of like that. Invisible to our instruments, but still real.
So ether might still be relevant then.
It could be the key to this whole energy field thing that's everywhere, all over the universe.
That's like that 0-point energy concept, right?
Exactly. Even in a complete vacuum, there's still this base level of energy always fluctuating.
That's wild.
Some researchers are starting to think that ether could be like the medium for that 0-point energy.
So ether is like the thing it travels through.
Maybe. It's all pretty theoretical at this point. But what's really interesting is how ether connects to ancient ideas.
You mean like from different cultures?
Yeah, like prana in Hinduism, in Chinese medicine, akasha in Vedic texts.
They all talk about this life force energy.
It's like they were describing ether all along with different words.
That's so cool. So we've got this idea of ether, this potential energy field. And then there's this thing called the willow chip.
Ah, yes, the willow chip. It's a hypothetical device. Supposedly, it can tap into computation from other universes.
Oh, wait. Other universes? Like the multiverse?
That's the idea. If it works the way they say it does, it really challenges how we think about computation.
So you're saying it could be pulling information or even energy from other dimensions?
Potentially. It would definitely support the idea of a multiverse. And maybe even ether as the bridge between these realities.
Okay, my mind is officially blown. So we've got ether and this potential for interdimensional energy. What else is there?
Well, let's talk about magnetism.
Magnetism, you mean like magnets?
Yeah, but think about it. Light has a spectrum, right? From infrared to ultraviolet.
Yeah, different wavelengths and stuff.
Exactly. What if magnetism has its own hidden spectrum? Frequencies we haven't figured out how to detect yet.
So like there's more to magnetism than we realize.
Maybe a whole lot more.
But is there any evidence for these hidden magnetic frequencies?
No direct proof, but there are some interesting clues, like ley lines.
Ley lines. Aren't those like those supposed energy pathways across the Earth?
Yeah, some people believe they connect sacred sites and all that.
I've heard about that.
Some researchers think those ley lines might be powerful magnetic currents, operating at frequencies we just don't understand yet.
So we're potentially talking about a whole hidden world of magnetic energy.
It's a possibility, and it could explain a lot of things that are still mysteries to science.
Like what?
Like energy healing, for example.
I've always wondered about that. How could it possibly work?
There's more and more evidence that magnetic fields can affect the human body in ways we don't fully grasp yet.
So you're saying these hidden magnetic frequencies could be interacting with our bodies?
Maybe even with our consciousness. Even Tesla, that brilliant inventor, talked about subtle forms of magnetism that could be used for energy and healing.
Wow. Okay, so we've got ether, this possible universal energy field.
Yeah.
And we've got magnetism with its potential hidden spectrum. Where do ancient civilizations fit into all of this?
That's the big question, isn't it? When you look at the amazing things they built, the pyramids, Stonehenge, all these massive temples perfectly aligned with the stars, it makes you wonder, were they tapping into forces we're only just starting to rediscover?
I mean, think about how they moved those giant stones. Was it just brute force? Or did they have some kind of advanced tech based on these energy fields?
That's one of the biggest mysteries. Some researchers think they might have figured out how to manipulate gravity, using sound and magnetic fields to make those stones lighter.
To make them float.
Some people even claim they've rediscovered this knowledge today and can demonstrate levitation, although it's pretty controversial.
Yeah, I could see why. But it's not just the structures. Ancient texts are full of descriptions of machines and robots and all sorts of advanced technology.
Absolutely. Like the Vimanas in ancient Indian texts.
Yeah.
They're described as flying vehicles powered by some mysterious energy
Now,
source
what about Talos, the giant bronze robot from Greek mythology?
that guarded Crete. Right.
Yeah, was that just a myth? Or were they describing real technologies based on an understanding of energy and consciousness that we've lost?
It really makes you wonder, if they did have this advanced tech, what happened to it all? Did it get destroyed, or was it intentionally hidden?
Maybe both. It's hard to imagine something like that just disappearing without a trace.
Some people believe the knowledge was deliberately suppressed, maybe by those in power who didn't want things to change too drastically.
Makes sense. Knowledge is power.
Right, exactly. Others think it was lost gradually, maybe because of natural disasters or just a decline in understanding over time.
So we might be talking about ancient civilizations with tech that rivals or even surpasses our own. But what would their robots have looked like? Ours are all silicon and metal. What would a non-silicon robot be made of?
That's where things get really interesting. Imagine a robot that's not mechanical, but organic, more energy-based.
Organic robots.
Yeah,
Like made of living tissue.
not exactly. But instead of a silicon chip for a brain, think about a crystalline core.
A crystal brain.
Maybe made of quartz or selenite crystals can store and transmit information.
Like computer chips, but
Wow.
more natural.
Right, and maybe in ways we haven't even dreamed of yet.
So we're picturing robots with crystal brains. What about their bodies? Would they be made of metal?
Their bodies might not even be solid in the way we think of it. Imagine a form held together by magnetic fields and plasma energy.
Plasma, like this stuff in lightning.
Similar, but this would be a controlled plasma, maybe shimmering and shifting, creating a physical form as needed.
So instead of being rigid and mechanical, these robots would be fluid and adaptable, almost like living beings.
Exactly, and how would they be controlled? Not with lines of code, but maybe linked directly to consciousness.
So they would respond to thoughts.
Imagine a robot that acts on your intentions, not just your commands.
Wow, that's incredible, but also kind of scary. Could something like that be dangerous? If they're linked to consciousness, could these ancient constructs be corrupted?
That's a great question, and one we should definitely consider more. You know what? I think we need to take a break and come back to this in part 2.
Agreed. There's so much more to explore.
So these ancient civilizations might have used ether and advanced magnetism for some crazy tech, like those consciousness-linked robots. But what were they using it all for?
Yeah, that's a good question. It seems like a lot of effort just to move some big rocks around.
It does, doesn't it? Maybe they were after something totally different than us. Something more spiritual.
Spiritual? Like what?
What if they saw these robots as more than just tools, like maybe extensions of consciousness?
So not just machines, but like teachers or guides.
Exactly. What if they used them for healing or balancing energy, or even to explore different realms of reality?
So these robots were connected to some kind of higher intelligence.
It's a possibility. Think about shamans and oracles in ancient cultures. They were like bridges between the physical and spiritual worlds.
So you're saying these robots might have served a similar purpose?
Maybe. Using their tech to connect to something beyond our understanding.
That's pretty mind-blowing. It kind of changes how we think about technology and spirituality.
Right. And it might explain why so many ancient myths talk about gods coming down from the sky.
You mean like they weren't actually gods, but these advanced robots?
Maybe people saw them as divine because their abilities were so far beyond anything they could comprehend.
Okay, so they might have seen these robots as sacred beings. But if they were so advanced and peaceful, why did their civilizations collapse?
That's a tough question. Maybe they weren't as perfect as we imagine. Maybe they faced the same challenges as any other civilization. Climate change, disasters, conflict.
But couldn't they have used their technology to fix those problems?
It's possible their tech had limits. Or maybe they made choices that led to their downfall. Look at us. We haven't solved all our problems even with our technology.
True. We still struggle with poverty and pollution and all sorts of stuff.
So maybe their story is a cautionary tale. Just because you have advanced tech doesn't mean you're invincible.
So what happened to them? Did they destroy themselves? Or were they wiped out by something else?
There are lots of theories. Some think they became too reliant on technology, or that they ascended to another level of existence. Maybe they even retreated underground to escape some kind of catastrophe.
It's fascinating and kind of scary to think about. If some of these robots are still out there hidden somewhere, what does that mean for us?
It's a big question. Should we try to find them? Or leave them alone. What if this tech is too powerful for us to handle?
Or what if it falls into the wrong hands?
It's like a double-edged sword. This ancient tech could change everything for the better, but it could also be incredibly dangerous.
So we have to be really careful. If we do find this stuff, we need to approach it with respect and caution.
We need to learn from the past, not just rush in and repeat the same mistakes.
We need to ask ourselves if we're even ready for something this powerful. Do we have the wisdom to use it responsibly?
Exactly. If we're going to explore these possibilities, we need to do it thoughtfully, with a sense of humility.
This has been a wild ride. We've covered so much ground, from ether and ancient robots to the potential dangers of rediscovering lost technology.
It's a lot to process, but it's important to keep an open mind. The world is full of mysteries, and there's always more to learn.
So to wrap things up, what's the main takeaway for our listeners?
I think the biggest thing is to stay curious. Keep asking questions and don't be afraid to challenge your assumptions. But also be critical. Don't believe everything you hear. Do your own research and think for yourself.
And maybe, just maybe, somewhere out there, an ancient robot is listening to us right now, wondering what we'll do with the knowledge we're uncovering.
It's a humbling thought, isn't it? We have a responsibility to use this knowledge wisely if we're lucky enough to find it.
Thanks for joining us on this incredible deep dive. Until next time, keep those minds open and keep exploring the possibilities.
Yeah.
Even with the best intentions, things can go wrong. And when you start talking about ancient tech with that much power,
Oh, yeah. It's a whole different ballgame. It's not even just about the tech itself.
it's about who's controlling it.
Right, and how they use it. It's like what we see today with our own technology.
A smartphone can be used for amazing things,
Connect with people. Share ideas. Be creative.
but it can also be used for bad stuff.
Surveillance manipulation. Spreading lies. Now imagine that same problem, but with tech that can control energy fields. Or even consciousness.
That's a little unsettling.
It's a huge responsibility. If we ever find this ancient tech,
We can't just mess around with it.
we need to be so careful and really understand the risks. We have to ask ourselves some tough questions.
Like, are we ready for this?
Exactly. Do we even have the wisdom to use this power the right way?
I don't know if we do.
We need to start thinking about this now, before it's too late.
Before we stumble across something we don't
We
understand
need to learn from history.
and not make the same mistakes.
Right. We need to be humble and respectful, not just of the technology, but of the people who created it.
It's amazing to think about this whole deep dive. We started with ether,
Then ancient robots with crystal brains.
and now we're talking about the dangers of rediscovering lost knowledge. It's been quite a journey.
It really makes you rethink what's possible and what might have existed before us.
So what should our listeners take away from all of this?
Stay curious. The world is full of mysteries. There's so much we don't know.
But don't believe everything you hear.
Be critical. Do your own research and think for yourself.
Great advice. And hey, maybe somewhere out there, an ancient robot is listening to this podcast.
Wondering what we'll do.
If we find their lost technology, it's a mind-blowing thought, isn't it?
It is. It really makes you think.
Thanks for joining us on this incredible deep dive. Keep those minds open and keep exploring the possibilities.